Welcome to the webinar. My name is Ronnie Kader, and I'm the SVP of Marketing for Symplast. Thank you, number one, to Jonathan from SiteStaff for setting this up, doing all the work. I'm really excited about this webinar that we've got today with Dr. Mata and Ashley. I know there's a lot to get to, and I know that Dr. Mata is in and out of surgeries as we speak. So Jonathan, if you want, go ahead and introduce the panelists, and let's get into it.
Our first panelist today is Ashley Davenport, and Ashley has been a client of ours at SiteStaff for several years and one of the brightest minds of really understanding how to run a practice. In addition to running Dr. Rapaport's practice, she also runs Coolspa, which has more cool sculpting than anybody in the state of New York. And so we're just absolutely thrilled to have Ashley here and be able to hear her story and her opinions. Dr. Mata has also been a client of SiteStaff for several years. Not only is he board certified for facial plastics and body plastics, but he also got his MBA. And there's no brighter person when it comes to, at least people that I've met in person, of somebody that really understands the numbers behind his practice and somebody who is truly risk tolerant when it comes to making very bold decisions for his practice, and always has his hands in the business side as well. So because of Dr. Mata's schedule, we've changed the format of this around slightly. We are going to have a very important poll, but we want to jump right into the questions because Dr. Mata is kind enough to join us between surgeries today, which is a wonderful example about how to run a terrific practice. And that he's not just talk. His practice is reopened in the state of Arizona, and he is a busy man. So with that being said, Ronnie, I'd like to hand it back to you, and we can just jump right into the questions for our panelists.
Awesome. So yeah, this is exciting. Dr. Mata is obviously a Symplast user. So, you know, this is especially very fun for us. So the first question that I want to ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Dr. Mata, is just when you found out that the restrictions were coming down, what were the first things that you did?
The reality was we knew it was coming. I was hoping for an extra week of being able to do surgery. I had about 4 weeks of surgery already scheduled. Even with this whole situation happening, if anything, I got more busy because people wanted to have surgery right before we got shut down so they could recover at home. So that was my particular situation.
Ashley, your practice is in New York. Obviously, it's much different situation, unfortunately, there than it is in some of the other parts of the country. So can you walk us through real quick kind of what your initial reaction was and how you handled it?
Sure. So the week leading up to our actual office closure, we had kind of toned things down a bit operationally, meaning we weren't double booking patients. We were seeing patients really one at a time. We weren't allowing any visitors to come with them. Any friends or family had to stay out of the office. We were asking patients when they were coming in if they traveled anywhere, if they have a temperature, fever, if they didn't feel well, and we'd immediately ask them to go wash their hands. So we were doing a lot of preparing already the week before with anticipation that we were gonna be closing, but we at least wanted, since we were allowed to stay open, we wanted to stay open safely. Once we got the directive, I think it was at the end of the day, March 20th, we found out that we were gonna be closing the following week. So immediately I thought, okay, first thing we need to do is communicate to our patients, communicate to leads that are getting in touch with us. And how are we gonna communicate, and what do we wanna communicate? And I think the biggest message is that we are still here. If you need us for anything, we're not going anywhere. You can reach us by email, by phone, text message, and we're not going anywhere. So we're here for you guys. If you have questions, we'll answer them to the best of our ability. And even though we can't see you in person, we can still manage your care virtually, whether it's with a virtual, follow-up or a phone call with Dr. Rapaport or any of our other providers. So communication was really important, and also putting something on our website. So anyone going to our website understood that things were changing due to the COVID restrictions and how they can get in touch with us going forward.
What was your strategy when this first happened? Were you just, we're not taking any bookings at all? Were you booking out 3 months? And then how has that evolved to what you're doing today?
Sure. So initially, I mean, we didn't know how long we were going to be closed for. We didn't know if it was going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. So we were initially just rescheduling surgeries 2 weeks out. And patients were very understanding. Once we got to the beginning, mid-April, we started moving surgeries up through June 1st off of the schedule and not rescheduling them, keeping patients on a list, letting them know that as soon as we have a date that we're going to be reopening, we're going to be able to reschedule your surgery. We haven't moved anyone from June forward. And luckily our surgical schedule has been booked 3 months out. So it's not like an empty schedule that we have to completely fill, but we definitely have a lot of patients that we need to accommodate who had surgeries. And so we're going to be opening up extra surgery dates. We do have a fully accredited operating room in our facility, so that's
big
for scheduling. And typically, Dr. Rapaport likes to have full OR days on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and I'm sure we're going to be opening a lot more days to accommodate those surgery patients who needed to be moved off of the schedule. For a lot of for booking surgeries, brand new surgeries, people who hadn't been on the schedule, we were actually incentivizing patients to give a deposit for surgery after their virtual consultations by waiving our facility fee. That's one easy thing that you can do. It makes the patient feel good. They're supporting a business, and we're able to give them a little bit of a courtesy off of the total price of their surgery. So we actually got a number of surgical bookings just by extending certain courtesies on the total cost of the surgery, and letting them know that once we are open, that because they've given their deposit, they will also be placed on a priority list. So they'll have priority booking as soon as we open, and those who haven't given deposits yet will be going after them.
No, that's great. And for anyone who's attending, obviously this is an interactive webinar, so get your questions in, but those are a couple great nuggets just now from Ashley about if you do have your own in-house OR, that's, you know, some really smart tactics. So, all right, Dr. Mata, you can actually give us facts here, which is, you know, something that people are desperate for the few practices that are open. I think you said you opened about a week ago. Is that right?
Actually, our stay-at-home order is still in place, but elective procedures were allowed to be done last Friday. So we've technically been open for 3 clinical days of doing surgery, and I've done surgery 2 out of those 3. I didn't do surgery last Friday because I wanted to let the ruckus of if it was going to happen or not. Going back,
do you have your own in-house? Sorry to interrupt, but just
yes.
So I can. Okay, so you have your own.
I do have my own operating room suite here. So it makes it logistically easier than the hospitals from that standpoint of allowing elective procedures. You know, when they're trying to do knees and hips and things that make money, they don't want to go take your lipo case or your facelift and be like, yeah, that's not really going to generate us money. So they're looking for those big insurance cases. So if you have your own suite, like Ashley said, that makes your life so much easier. I think for me, the way we kind of handled it is because we had at least a month of surgeries. I actually had to give close to like $100,000 back because I had patients, 20% of my practice flies in from out of town, and we didn't know when we would open. So, you know, we have a non-refundable deposit that within 6 weeks of surgery, but based on the circumstances, I just let those individuals that were from out of town get their money back, or whoever wanted to. We just said, hey, we don't know the circumstances, but if you want your money back, we're happy to give you that. No questions asked. But for the most part, people still wanted to keep on the schedule. So what we did, like Ashley's group, we blocked it off for 2 weeks. So we knew we got our stay-at-home order May 22nd. So he said, hey, we're going to review this in 2 weeks based on that stay-at-home order. So I moved the surgery schedule till April 15th. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know, you know, and then it got advanced another for a month. And I'm like, okay, well, let's block off April and assume that we're not going to be able to operate. But I still had things on the books that I just kind of moved over, even though our schedule lightened up a little bit. but my consults seem to have gone up about 30 to 50% depending on the day. So I pretty much worked every single day since this whole situation. I would still come into the office. I would treat it like a regular day, even though it was a virtual day. We were able to see patients in live if they needed to. So I still saw post-op surgical patients that I had done maybe a week or two before that still needed actual care rather than virtually, but we shifted everything to virtual through Symplast. And sometimes we would do FaceTime if the patients couldn't figure out the logistics, but I still saw virtual consults, and pretty much most of the virtual patients were like, how soon can you get me in? Are you operating? Because they're in another state and they're like, hey, I want to come and have surgery now. And I'm like, we're still closed. But the difference, I think, between our practice and yours, Ashley, is I didn't offer any discounts. I did value adds, meaning like, hey, if you want to leave a deposit, we'll give you 2 free M-Sculpt treatments, or hey, we'll give you a free filler in addition to having your breast augmentation. So instead of going down on our costs, we just added more value to them for being vested during this time when you would think that people are trying to save their money, but you'd be surprised how many people like, hey, I have $1,200 right now from the government. I'm ready to leave my deposit. And, and they're like, I can finance the rest. So it was kind of, for some people, that's kind of the way it worked out. And in this process of, kind of being shut down, even though we were still working, but not seeing patients virtually, I saw, gosh, I'm going to say probably like 60 virtual consultations, and we booked about 40 of them. So my surgery schedule right now is going into July. And it's pretty much, I'm operating 5 days a week. I usually do 4, and I opened up the extra day, and people still want to come in May because they're like, hey, my stay-at-home order expires. I want to recover. So we might open up Saturdays. I don't know because, the backlog, and I still don't know what the economy is going to do. So that's my 2 cents on how to kind of keep the surgery schedule full. And again, there's different ways to do it. If you have your surgery center and you can waive the fees, by all means, but I'm always a person, give them more value rather than go down on the cost. But just my 2 cents.
And just to verify, that free M-Sculpt session, that's valid for me, right? Because I'm going to fly
sure,
down there.
If you want to come to Arizona, I'll hook
take
you up with one.
advantage of that.
Sure.
Yeah. So last question real quick for you, Dr. Mott, and then I want to get Ashley's take on this. Talk about the protocols that you guys have put in place. I mean, everyone knows, we're sanitizing our hands a lot more. It seems like a lot of practices are actually testing patients for COVID-19. So can you just real quick talk about some of the new measures and safety protocols that you've put into place? And then Ashley, if you could, talk about the same and what you're already doing, what you're looking at doing, and things like that.
So I think once we got the stay-at-home order, and this seemed like for sure this is going to be a real thing, I ordered some antibody testing as soon as possible. I ordered some N95 masks because I typically don't have those in the office because we don't really need stuff like that. We bought as many supplies as we could as soon as they said, hey, shut down, because at some point we were going to reopen. So making sure that we had whatever supplies we could get our hands on, even though we knew they weren't coming for a month or 5 weeks, that they would be available to us, just like the society opened up and they're already out of supplies. So part of that is, if you know you're closed for another month, order stuff now, knowing that you're not going to get it, but by the time you get it, you're going to need it. So we are testing, antibody testing, because we don't have the swabs for the RNA test. That's what we're doing for our surgical patients. We have N95 masks, so we are limiting it to 1 patient in the operating room and 1 patient in the spa side of it. And it's 1-way entrance, 1-way exit, because we have 2 exits here. I know in New York it's probably not possible to have 2 different exits, but at least when they walk in the door, they're not going to leave through that exit. So the traffic is going 1 way, and everything is done in the patient's room. So we were able to, if they needed to fill out their paperwork, we walk them into a room, they can do that. We send it to them, but sometimes they don't. We check them out in the room, we give them hand sanitizer, all that stuff. If it's an injectable patient, then we cover their mask. If it's they're doing lip injections, we use hypochlorous acid to help them keep as clean as possible while our staff is wearing N95 masks, so that we are preventing anything to the patient from that standpoint. And obviously we're doing kind of like a deep clean after every patient.
Awesome. And before I get to Ashley, because I don't know if you have to run, hopefully you won't, but if you have to run, make sure we'll follow up with you, because in the Symplast practice flow, there's some cool things we've added to do an entire contactless waiting area, check-in, all of these really cool things that we've added. So I'll get with you because I think it'll definitely help for that. All right, Ashley, talk to us about what's in plan and then, you know, if you're making adjustments.
Right. So, I mean, we haven't gotten any clear instructions from the governor or any of our societies yet, but we are already trying to stock up on supplies. So we actually opened an Amazon business account, which is something everyone should do, because you're going to be getting access to supplies that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, just even as a Prime member. And you're also going to get shipping priority. So that's super important. We also looked at like ASAPs, ASPS for supplies, and we were able to order some things for our society, but definitely not enough, not more than 2 weeks worth of N95s and gowns. We've actually even asked some of our staff members, if you see Purell or if you see any disinfectants around where you live, please get them. The practice will reimburse you. And just kind of making this into a team effort, which has been kind of fun. I'm getting like pictures from staff, like they text me like, is this one good? Is this sanitizer good? It's only 8 ounces, but it's only $5. I'm like, get it. With regards to COVID testing, we were looking to have some COVID tests on hand, and I think we'll be able to get some through the society. But it's important for all surgical patients as part of their preoperative testing to have a COVID test done. And that should be done within 2 to 3 days of their surgery, because they get a test 2 weeks ago. I mean, that means that they were negative 2 weeks ago, not negative maybe the day of their surgery. So we want the test to happen as close to their surgical date as possible. But the problem right now for us is finding a place that can guarantee a result in 2 days. I know that Quest Lab has testing. I know that Rapaport does, but I'm just not sure as to how quickly the results come back, like how quickly we can get those results. So we still are staying tuned for that. It's really important, though, that all surgical patients have COVID testing due to potential complications with COVID patients. One thing is blood clotting. We already know there's a higher instance of potential blood clotting with COVID patients. So if someone's undergoing general anesthesia and blood clots, never good. Also, whenever you're dealing with someone's airway, it's really a good idea to not be COVID positive. We are going to be having our staff suited up with PPE. So staff that will be performing even basic procedures are going to be in gowns, and they're going to be wearing N95s with a shield over their faces. Patients will also be asked to wear masks. So even if they're getting cool sculpting done, they're going to be sitting there with a mask on. They're going to be washing their hands, sanitizing when they come into our office. Again, they're not coming with anybody unless it's absolutely necessary. Like if a patient has a caretaker that needs to be with them, that's okay. But other than that, there's no friends, there's no family. Sorry, wait outside. And then with regards to staffing, because we do have a staff of about 8 or 9 at any given time, we're going to be staggering schedules. So at least in our front office waiting area, which will no longer really be a waiting area because we won't have anyone sitting there for any long period of time. But the staff was sitting maybe 2 feet from each other, 3 front desk individuals, and now we're not going to be having that. So we're going to still have some staff continue to work from home, and then we're also going to be staggering staff schedules. So maybe we'll have someone come in and, Samantha, she works at our front desk. She can be working from 9 to 1, and then Alexa, she can be working from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 or however late we're there. So those are some of the things that we're going to be doing when the office opens back.
That was actually going to be my next question was, are you adjusting your organizational structure moving forward where you will start using some remote workforce elements? And it sounds like the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Last question, because I know we're running tight on time, but this is something that I'm just curious about. from each of you. First, Dr. Mata, well, first of all, do you specialize in a certain type of procedure? Like, oh, I'm known for breasts or rhinoplasties or, everything. Is there a certain procedure that is your go-to staple that you overwhelmingly do a large proportion of?
I would like to say I hope not, but I do a lot of lipo. It's not my favorite thing to do, but sometimes you got to pay the bills. So you do what you can. But I'd like to structure my practice a third face, a third breast, a third body, and keep it that way. But
Perfect.
It's about 50% body lipo and body procedures, mommy makeovers, lipo, and then the other 50% is breast and face. So
the reason I asked, that's great. Because we've gotten this question on a lot of the other webinars of the societies and stuff. Are there any procedures that you personally are a little hesitant to do for whatever reason right now, whether it's because of possible complications from ventilators or how long they'd be under anesthesia? Like, are there any surgical procedures that you are rethinking or doing any adjustments to?
I am personally not, but I typically do cases under like conscious sedation or TIVA. So there is no intubation of my patients from that standpoint. So I'm not worried about a breathing tube or respiratory issues from that standpoint because they're breathing on their own. They're on face mask, they're on nasal cannula. I mean, these are different dynamics that if your office is structured with GA, then you might consider maybe not doing facial aesthetics, from that standpoint, because again, you're going to need a box, you're going to intubate somebody. And again, the premise is if you're using general anesthesia, you have to treat every patient, regardless of the test being negative, like they're COVID positive, because even though you get the test, it's not 100% accurate. Even if you do the RNA test and it's a day or 2 days, let's say you test them 2 days ago and they ran into somebody on the way home and they got it. And all of a sudden they're spewing it and you have no idea. And for me, the biggest fear is that if somebody in my office gets it or I get it, like we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks, whether everything is open or not. And that's what I'm trying to avoid from that standpoint, that we already had one shutdown. We don't need another one.
Yep. And Ashley, I'm going to actually switch up the question. A lot of practices, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Jonathan. So what advice would you give and what are you planning on doing in terms of adjusting the ratio of surgical versus non-surgical revenue for your practice? Are you expecting you're going to need to ramp up the non-surgical side for a little bit? I know you have an in-house OR, so I'm just curious of your strategy for that.
I don't think we're going to be making any adjustments in terms of, ratio of surgeries to minimally invasives or non-invasives. Dr. Rapaport really prefers doing most of his surgeries under IV sedation. Again, he likes when the patient is able to follow orders, especially when he's doing liposuction. He can tell them to turn this way, turn that way. They follow the command. They just don't remember anything afterwards. So he's a proponent of IV sedation. But again, you just have to think about intubating a patient if there's ever an emergency. And that's what I mean when you're dealing with surgeries, any kind of anesthesia, you still have to think about the airway. But no, I don't think we plan on changing anything. Again, I don't think the market has changed so much either. We have lots of patients who still want surgeries, can't wait till we're open. They want their surgeries and they want their Botox. They want the best of both worlds. And I think being able to offer both is fantastic.
Yep, that seems to be the big takeaway and a little bit of a surprise from 1 month ago when everyone was expecting the worst. From what I'm hearing so far, and it sounds like you guys are kind of confirming it, the demand for surgeries is still strong. So yeah, so Jonathan, I thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to you to kind of queue up the next portion.
Thanks. I want to ask one question before we launch a poll. And again, guys, we did this a little bit out of order because Dr. Mata might have to just rush right back into surgery. I just appreciate him being here. But a lot of these practices that have been closed and maybe aren't as proactive as your practices are. We've heard a lot of, good details as far as, even when the practice reopens about, being sensitive to certain things about COVID, but it's about the things that you guys were doing when other practices were just closed. And I'll be happy to share results both from this poll and live. And I'll ask our attendees to make sure that that you answer honestly, because we want to make sure that that we kind of get a state of the union. Your two practices, and Dr. Mata, you and I will talk at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and you're still in the office doing virtual consults. But what are the things that you've done along, and we'll just go ahead and hold it to one, and we'll start with you, Ashley. What's the one thing that allowed you to be able to keep surgeries on the books, even when you were doing that, to where your door was essentially open from the start of this until even still now, when you can't be in practice yet? But what are you doing every day that is allowing those surgeries to stay on the books?
Really communicating with our staff and communicating with patients. So communicating with staff is just as important. We do at least 2 to 3 Zoom meetings a week, and we're talking about leads that are coming in, how leads are being handled, social media, and just creating tasks for staff and managing staff via Zoom meetings. I think it's super important. Everyone's on the same page and everyone gets to ask questions, and everyone is communicating the same information to patients that they're in touch with, right? And then again, the other component is patient communication. So whether that, we've sent over 15 different types of emails. They're personalized. Some of them are blasts. Everything ranging from skincare offerings. If, they're out of their favorite products, we can ship to them. To encouraging virtual consults to patients who maybe had a consult but never booked, or to inquiries that, asked, for surgical consults and then became unresponsive or never ended up coming in. So just trying to communicate with leads, communicate with patients via social media, through our blogs on our website, through text messages. A lot of our providers actually have personal relationships with our patients. So checking in, especially on our most key and VIP patients, and letting them know we're here, asking them how they're doing. So not just soliciting them or asking them to put a deposit down for something or letting them know of a promotion, but actually just being a human and saying, hey, how are you doing today? And that's honestly meant the world to so many of our patients, just hearing from us. And, it's also been very helpful that we've had Dr. Rapaport volunteering for the last 3 weeks at Bellevue Hospital on the COVID ward here. So that's actually been generating a lot of content, and it's been generating a lot of patient interest. They want to see how Dr. Rapaport's doing. And, he sends us little videos and little photos from Bellevue, and we've been able to get some of our vendors and even patients to sponsor lunches and meals for him and his team at the hospital, and sharing those things with our patients and on our social media, I think has been really valuable.
That's huge, Ashley. What a perfect example about how to make sure that you're staying relevant in the eyes of your customers, and that you're taking care of your VIPs. Very similar to you, right, Dr. Mata?
Maybe it's a little bit different from the standpoint that I don't think we were nearly as hit, like 1/100th of what happened in New York from that standpoint. The only thing that I did from my standpoint is I offered free injury repair, so to speak. So if somebody had cuts or burns or things like that at home, while everybody's at home because they're at stay-at-home orders and they didn't want to go to the emergency room, that I would take care of them in my office for free. So if they had small lacerations or whatever, anything that I could take care of that didn't require like going to the OR just under local, that I would take care of for free. And I did that probably about a week after we started the stay-at-home order. And again, I have to run in a little bit, but the thing that I want to impart upon whoever's still closed is, don't hunker down and be like, okay, we'll just figure this out slowly. Like, you have to get on it now. And what I mean by that is our social media, we get a lot of views on our social media from that standpoint. And every day I'm on there talking to the people that follow us. And, just sometimes it's just memes. Other times it's like, hey, we're going to show you a throwback of a surgery that we did a year ago. But now you actually get to see the surgery and you get to see the before and after. So that actually has generated more leads than when I just post surgeries of what we do, because they actually get to see it and they get to see the results, that they're like, oh, wow, that's what it's actually going to look like. So my 2 cents, like Ashley said, is communicate with your staff. Absolutely imperative. We didn't do it quite as often, but we did it once a week with the entire team. But I personally would always talk to my coordinators because I was still doing virtuals pretty much every day, that I always met with them. And yes, we did stagger. Some days we'd come into the office, other days everybody worked from home. But it's all about the communication, like you said, with the patients, with the leads, telling them and being honest, being like, hey, we don't know when we're going to open, but right now, if you want to leave a deposit, you get this, and you'll get first priority when there's an opening. And if you want to book now, we're booking into whatever month it is, and you get dibs, because at some point this is going to end. It's just inevitable that it is going to end, and you just need to do everything you can to kind of be prepared for it. I think there's a couple of questions that I'll try to answer before I have to go. Yep. And I kind of answered it online already, but how long is a virtual consult? It's however long it needs to be. I would see the patients at 7 o'clock at night because some of these people are still working. And so I'm trying to accommodate them because, I mean, I'm at home. And, you know, with Symplast, I can just log into the app and talk to them, or FaceTime if you don't have Symplast. And again, all these people are at home doing nothing but being on TV and social media. So you have glued eyes to whatever it is that you do, to your followers, to your Facebook group, to whatever it is. You have all these people looking at you, wanting information, and your leads, if you're putting content out there, people are looking for it. So when the lead is interested, do your best to kind of accommodate them, because they're also looking at other doctors, not just you. And if you're the first to answer and see them and they like what you're putting out there, they're going to leave a deposit with you as opposed to talking to 5 other people. So, you know, it's one of those things that I think, do the best that you can to kind of accommodate individuals, and just be wary of that. Sometimes people just want to FaceTime you to talk to someone else outside of their group. So be cognizant of your time with that. Oh, for the COVID testing, it's not a guarantee. And again, it's not mandated by the society, but it's for your own safety from that standpoint in terms of the COVID testing, in my opinion. Society recommends it, but if you can't have access to it and you don't, you do the best that you can. So that's just it.
Agreed. Thank you, Dr. Mata. I know you're going to run really quickly, and we're going to go ahead and throw up the poll now. Again, just out of order, respecting Dr. Mata's time, but Ashley will be here for the duration of the session. This is pretty cool, and why we're doing this is our top 5 checklist that you're going to receive afterwards is going to be based on the popularity of these answers. So check all that apply about, you know, when you got the word and what you've done during this part, where we're trying to find out, and I'll go ahead and discuss about the survey that my team at SiteStaff did, surveying 60 practices. And I'm interested to find out if we're going to be generating the same type of results that we're seeing here. Leave it open for just another moment. And in case all of a sudden you see Dr. Mata running off, it's because he has a surgery that's going to be waiting for him. So thanks a lot for your time, Doc.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Take care.
Take care, doctor.
And any other questions for Dr. Mata? He's very accessible, and probably about the hardest working doc that that we get to serve here at SiteStaff, as far as putting in a lot of extra time to be able to make sure that he's available. Doesn't have quite the size of staff that Ashley does, which is why I believe that she's the hardest working person at their practice. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and wrap it up, and let's look at the results score of. About 50%, a little over 50% actually did some layoffs and furloughs. What I'm surprised of is that only 18% slash marketing spend. That means we have a very intelligent group here. I can assure you that that is not the average of the practices that we polled, where roughly 75% of them did slash budget. Those of you who increased budget, which is only 12%, I can assure you that Dr. Rapaport's practice and Dr. Mata's practice held true and increased as well, because the getting's good, right, Ashley?
Yeah.
You know, you can be able to advertise in some channels that are more cost effective because the space is open. You know, the world can be your oyster, and you can gain share through this process. 78% of staff available to answer the phone during business hours is right about, they said about 85% of the practices that we polled. But we also found that that information was a little hollow, because It doesn't mean that they were necessarily available during that time, and we didn't get a lot of callbacks. But again, we weren't patients, and we were very transparent about that. Staff shifting surgery dates, and this is terrific. It's glad to see. I'm wondering what the other 21% weren't doing. Were you giving money back because it was the right thing to do? I would still say that these are people that are still very interested. If you're like Dr. Mata in those cases where you deal with a lot of out-of-towners, and I know Ashley you do as well, but there are a lot of low-cost concessions that you can be able to provide to be able to keep people on the schedule, which I think you guys have done a great job of. The virtual consults, shocking to me, guys. This is and this is right at about the number. Only about 60% of the practices that we polled that were not clients, by the way, they were in our database, and we just had conversations because we really do represent a lot of elite practices, and we're very fortunate that they have so many places at hand that there aren't more people that were offering virtual consults. If you are not open now, guys, and if there's one thing that I would highly, highly advise, the government right now allows for, in closed environments, and you have to be careful, you can still be sued if you don't know who's on the other end of a Zoom line or FaceTime. Those are not HIPAA compliant channels, but you don't have to have Symplast, which is HIPAA compliant, to allow to do that. Our chat is HIPAA compliant, but we're not doing consults during that time as well. But the government has relaxed to give you the versatility of a Zoom, which is why Zoom's making so much money right now. Take advantage of those channels where, at least for the time being and until we're back to normal, use whatever channel, use FaceTime, use Skype, use Zoom, because right now you are still allowed to use that. You just have to be very, very careful and cognizant of who's on the other line, and nobody's snapping pictures when they're doing something like that. But
and let me jump in. Let me do my
right
shameless. I'm shamelessly jumping in here because don't do Zoom. Do Symplast. We literally made a free telehealth standalone option for this. Like, we literally took all the telehealth aspects of our software, patient app, virtual video visits, secure text messaging, sending of multimedia files, promotions, all that stuff, appointment reminders, everything. You literally can get that for free for 2 months. And then if you want to cancel on day 59, cancel, and you don't owe a dime. It makes no sense to sign up and pay for something like Zoom that's not an actual telehealth solution. All it is a virtual meeting. Get something made for the industry and rob us if you want on day 59 and cancel. You don't have to renew. It's like, it's almost like mind-boggling. So that's my shameless plug I'm gonna throw in there. If you aren't doing telehealth, don't pay for Zoom, don't pay for Skype. Literally get telehealth for free for the next 2 months. And then if you want to keep doing just the telehealth part for $199 a month, fine. If not, don't worry.
You heard it here, guys. Take advantage of Ronnie's offer. It's I can tell you there aren't a lot of compliant software systems that are extending that offer. The last 2 points, and then I want to open it up for questions, is pretty staggering. So only about 20% of the doctors that we polled were actually doing their own virtual consults. If you're not Dr. Rapaport and you're not volunteering at Bellevue Hospital, which is wonderful PR, as well as showing how big of a heart he has, the amount of philanthropic responsibilities and dedication that Dr. Rapaport has is unmatched. I've never seen anybody do as much that he does year round. It's not just, saving a month here and there, and Ashley goes with him. I mean, they do a lot for society in general, but that's wonderful PR. But the other thing is the outbound calls, 20% of the ones that we polled were actually doing anything proactively. Guys, at least do what Ashley recommends to take care of your VIPs. They love you. They have personal relationship with your staff, with your doctor, with your practice manager, with your liaisons. They should be playing an active role. You got to take care of those VIPs that will spend the money to be able to hold their place on a calendar. At minimum, at least be able to do that, just even if it's just saying hello. Because Ashley, my takeaway wasn't necessarily how you were keeping things on the calendar, but you're maintaining relationships with the people that really care, right?
Absolutely. That is first and foremost. You really want to just stay in touch with everyone as best as you can, whether it's a phone call, an email, a text, and not just once, but this has been going on for a little bit of time now. So check in once, twice. I have actually a patient that calls me once a week. She's like, a surrogate grandmother to me, and she asked me how I'm doing and how Dr. Rapaport is, and I update her on his time at the hospital and how things are looking there, and she's so appreciative, and she's just like, just please tell me as soon as you're open. I want to be the first one there. And I said, absolutely, you got it. So yeah, I think you have to remember that there are a lot of people who may be alone, a lot of people who are not with their families, and even just a text or call, just a simple one that says hi makes all the difference in their lives.
Totally agree. We'll go ahead and there's only been a couple, and I think that either through the content or through Dr. Mata, who was even kind to even jump on and answer a couple questions in the chat feature. But we'll go ahead and open it up. We're right about at time now, and so thank you very much, Ashley, and also Dr. Mata for spending the time with us. This is super powerful. And again, being able to supercharge your track to be able to reopen is going to be key from what you've learned today, as well as the things that we can share. Are there any other questions that are from the group? We've had a lot of them through, but Gaurav, I believe that we have the majority of them answered I'm looking through the chat and seeing. Any other ones?
One just came through, I see, for Ashley. Are you going to rebook patients in order of how they were canceled back in March to have first priority?
So we're going to try and do a lot of that, but some patients are going to take greater priority over others, you know, depending on the age of the patient, what exactly the surgery is. Some patients with ruptured implants, we'd see that more of a need than maybe someone who's getting liposuction. So we're having those internal discussions. We do have a list of patients who do get priority booking based on deposits they've given. We're, you know, at least staying on our surgery schedule, not asking for refunds. So we're really going to accommodate those patients who kind of stuck with us, but as well as accommodate the patients who are already on the schedule. So before new surgeries, new consults are booked, and surgeries are booked, we're definitely going to accommodate those who already had surgeries on the schedule that we had to take off for sure.
Thanks, Ashley. And I want to leave, before I hand it over to you, Ronnie, for parting messages, having conversations with Ashley. Ashley is one of the only practices that we serve and have served as long as we've served you, Ashley. And it's been several years. I'm not sure how long, but Ashley is still inspecting what she's expecting every single week. The practice is closed, but we still meet every week to be able to go over results. And if you're not the hardest working doctor in your town right now, or the hardest working person that is responsible for leadership at a practice, you need to be. You're missing the boat. I believe that this is one of those calculated, and I don't mean to sound as like doom and gloom aspect. It's really from opportunity aspect to say the strong are going to survive this, and this is your opportunity to set things in place and in foundations to where look, I mean, you know, you can put your head in the sand, but the businesses that are really capturing everything right now and are earning share, no matter how big it is. I mean, Ashley's in the heart of Manhattan, but there really isn't enough business to go around right now. This is your opportunity to really put a cap on your business for when it does reopen, to say, we can't take anymore. I call it business Darwinism. The strong are going to survive. And if you're not working the hardest that you can work right now, if you are a practice manager and your doc isn't working the hardest, you can still play golf and make some personal phone calls, but I would want to make sure that this is where the effort that you put in right now, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, Ronnie, you too, you conduct so many of these webinars right now that I'm saying that the hardest working right now are the ones that are going to come out of this better in the long run. Ashley, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think that honestly, I don't understand anybody who says they're bored or like they don't have anything to do. I find that every minute of every day, there's something you can be doing to improve your practice. I mean, you can take a look at your website and just read over the pages, see if you can add content to your website, look at your pre and post instructions or your procedure information sheets that you give to patients. What can you do to make them better? What can you do? Look at this as a time to also revamp your practice. So to work on things that maybe you don't have time to work on when you have patients all day long and your practice is open and busy. It's really a great time to kind of look at things that you want to improve and get a start on that.
Terrific. Ronnie, parting comments, and then we'll talk about the next steps.
Well, I know we wanted to talk about my incredible work ethic, and that I am the hardest working person in show business. But I am going to echo what Ashley said. Ashley's had a lot of great nuggets here, but time's running out. But some of the things that we were recommending over the past 6 weeks for taking advantage of this downtime, examples are using your efforts in an efficient, smart way. So, for example, like Ashley was saying, okay, you're bored, start making some videos. Make a welcome video. You don't need Steven Spielberg. Start taking the top 5 surgical procedures that you perform every month and record a simple 2 to 3 minute post-treatment instructional video with 2 of your staff members. I've done it at so many customers' practices. It's so easy to do it. And the concept is basically compile all of this content and compile all of these assets now while you have the time, because you're not going to find time. You're always going to be too busy once your patients start coming again. And then what you're going to be able to do is use that content as remote touch points, contactless touch points throughout the patient's aesthetic life cycle. Because we're going to be living in a virtual paradigm for a while, that patient practice relationship needs the human touch, like Ashley's been saying. And I said it first. Ashley stole it from me, actually. She was on a webinar I did, and she saw all the stuff I was saying and stole it. But you need to supplement this remoteness with the nearest equivalent of human interaction. And so creating these videos and this content that you can fill in along the patient journey from the very beginning, before they even arrive, they get a welcome video. Maybe it's a video assuaging patient concerns about safety, pointing out all of the measures that you're taking, right? During the treatment portion itself, it could be, just some personal secure text messages or something where it's just checking in and like Ashley said, calling the patients back and forth. It doesn't have to be your real grandma. Treat it like your grandma. And then after the procedure, of course, the follow-up and getting the referrals. And then, of course, getting the upsell and the cross-sells. So I know that was a very long-winded, rambling comment, but basically, to summarize, it's just there is plenty to do right now, and it is too late, but it's never too late. So even if you have a week, just make a very simple list. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't try and conquer Rome, but just work to create that content that can be repurposed over and over and over again, because that's going to be critical in the new normal.